The hunters arrive. The galaxy had always known the name of the Dravak. They were not builders. They were not dreamers. They were hunters. For thousands of years, the Dravak spread across the stars, not to make allies, but to collect trophies. They hunted every species they found. Some races had wings, some had scales, some had fire in their blood, but none of them escaped. The Dravak turned their victims into bones displayed in halls of war. Entire planets became nothing more than memories, whispered by survivors hiding in shadows. They called themselves the masters of the hunt. Others called them demons. And yet there was one world the Dravak had ignored for too long: Earth. The planet sat quietly at the edge of a spiral arm, its blue seas and green lands hidden under clouds. To the Dravak, humans were just another forgotten species too small to be worthy prey. For centuries they passed Earth by, focusing on bigger targets. But pride is a hunger that never ends. At last, the Dravak High Council demanded it. Humanity would be hunted. A fleet of warships broke from the dark void, sharp like knives, each one painted with blood-red marks of victory. Their engines lit the night as they approached Earth, moving with the confidence of predators who believed no prey could resist them. On the lead ship stood Warlord Kraxus, his massive frame covered in armor taken from a dozen species. His fangs dripped with venom as he looked at the planet below. "This is the last world on our list," he growled to his officers. "Humans will fall like the others. Their bones will decorate my walls." The crew roared in agreement. For them, the hunt was not war. It was pleasure. But the moment their ships crossed Earth's orbit, something strange happened. The sensors flickered. Screens glitched. Weapons lost their locks. The hunters growled in frustration, believing it was only interference from the planet's atmosphere. They laughed, thinking humans used primitive machines. Yet deep in the command center, Kraxus frowned. His instincts told him something was wrong. "Where are their defenses?" he demanded. No missiles, no starships, no planetary shields. Earth looked unprotected, naked before their eyes. Still, the silence felt heavy, too heavy. "Send the first wave," Kraxus ordered. Dropships launched from the fleet, cutting through the clouds and roaring toward the forests and deserts below. The hunters armed their claws and spears, excited for the first blood. The first team landed in a thick jungle, their boots crushing the wet soil. Birds scattered into the sky and strange animal cries echoed. The Dravak laughed, confident. "This will be easy," one said, raising his rifle. But then came the sound. A sharp crack from the trees. One hunter fell, his chest pierced by a bullet. The others spun around in shock. Another crack. Another hunter dropped, his armor shattered. The jungle grew silent. Too silent. The Dravak raised their weapons and fired blindly into the trees, burning holes through the leaves. But there was no enemy, no movement. Only whispers carried on the wind. Then one by one, the hunters vanished, pulled into shadows. Silent screams echoed. Then nothing. The surviving Dravak panicked. Their training meant nothing here. The jungle was not their hunting ground anymore. It belonged to something else. On the orbiting flagship, Kraxus waited for reports. His comms officer turned pale. "My lord, the first team is gone, all signals lost," Kraxus snarled. "Gone? How?" "They were the hunters." The officer shook his head. "It feels like they became the prey." Kraxus bared his fangs. For the first time in his life, doubt crawled into his heart. He looked again at the blue planet below, its clouds moving calmly, its oceans shining in the light of the sun. But now, it did not look like prey. It looked like a trap. The fallen world's news spread quickly across the galaxy. In dark taverns, in secret refugee camps, and in the broken halls of ruined planets, whispers rose. The Dravak had gone to Earth. For generations, the Dravak had been the terror of the stars. They hunted the proud races of the Talori, who once filled the skies with silver ships. They wiped out the Varnak, a people of fire who lived in molten seas. Even the giant Itrax, who could shatter mountains with their claws, had fallen. None escaped the hunters. None ever fought back. Survivors still remembered the sound of Dravak war horns and the sight of their blood-red banners. They never lose, an old Talori refugee whispered to his grandchildren. Once they mark your world, you are already dead. But now, something was different. The Dravak had gone to Earth. And for the first time, silence followed them. No glorious hunts. No trophies displayed. No ships returning with victory cries. Only silence. At the edge of the galaxy, in a small station run by escaped species, a council of survivors gathered. They spoke in low voices, afraid the Dravak might hear. They say the first wave vanished, said a scaled Varnak elder, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. No signals, no screams. Just gone. A thin Talori shook his head. That is impossible. The hunters do not vanish. They kill. But what if, another voice whispered, trembling, what if this time they met prey that killed back? The council fell silent. The thought was madness. No one had ever seen the hunters defeated. Still, rumors kept growing. A wandering trader swore he saw it with his own eyes. I passed near Earth system, he said, his voice shaking. The Dravak fleet was there. But their patrol ships were missing. I swear I saw their war banners burning in the void. Burned. The listeners gasped. Burned banners meant only one thing: defeat. Some laughed nervously, calling it a lie, but others felt a spark of hope. Something dangerous, something long dead. Hope that the galaxy's greatest hunters had finally met something worse than themselves. Meanwhile, on the Dravak flagship, Warlord Kraxus listened to the reports of his missing soldiers. His officers knelt before him, shaking with fear. The first and second waves. Gone, my lord. One stammered. No comms, no bodies, nothing. Kraxus slammed his clawed hand onto the table, splitting the steel. His fangs dripped as he growled. Impossible. No prey can erase us so easily. Find them. Send more ships. But inside, even he felt the unease. His hunters were not returning. Something was wrong. The Dravak had hunted every species in the stars. They knew how prey behaved. Prey screamed, prey ran, prey begged, but humans had given them only silence, and silence, Kraxus realized, was far more terrifying. Across the galaxy, more survivors whispered in secret corners. If humans truly fight back, the Talori elder murmured, then maybe the age of the hunters is ending. For the first time in living memory, those who once lived as prey dared to imagine a world without the Dravak. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew what the humans were planning. The first strike. The Dravak dropships tore through Earth's clouds once again, their hulls glowing red as they cut the sky. Warlord Kraxus had grown furious with the silence. 2 hunting teams had gone below and never returned. He would not be mocked by a forgotten world. This time, he sent his best hunters, seasoned killers who had brought down giants on frozen moons and serpents from burning seas. Their armor carried the scars of 100 victories. They laughed as the planet rose beneath them. Humans will beg like the rest. One growled. They will run, and we will chase, another answered. The ship slammed into the ground, shaking the earth. Hatch doors opened with a hiss and the hunters poured into the jungle and deserts. Their war cries echoed, sharp and cruel, but no human voice answered. The hunters spread out. Some searched the thick forests, others marched across sand dunes, under a blazing sun. Everywhere, Earth seemed empty, too empty. One hunter bent down to study the ground. Strange marks cut across the dirt. Lines, circles, and sharp edges, not animal tracks, not random, deliberate. Traps, he whispered. Before he could rise, the earth exploded. A spike shot up, piercing his chest. He screamed once before falling, silent. The other hunters fired wildly, but the jungle swallowed their shots. From the shadows, the counterattack began. Silent cracks echoed. Rifle fire, sharp and precise. A Dravak fell, his helmet shattered. Another turned and collapsed, a bullet tearing through his throat. The hunters roared in rage, but the enemy never showed their faces. Humans were not charging like prey. They were hunting. In the desert, another squad marched between dunes. Heat shimmered, and the hunters grew impatient. Then the sand beneath them shifted. Mines exploded, tearing two hunters apart. As the survivors scrambled, hidden shapes rose from the dunes, humans in sand-colored armor, their rifles cold and steady. The first volley dropped half the squad. The rest ran for cover, but there was none. One hunter tried to roar a challenge, but a human knife silenced him in the dark. On the flagship above, Craxus waited for victory reports. Instead, his comm screens flickered with static. Then a voice came through. Not Dravak. Human. It was calm. Cold. You are not the hunters anymore. Craxus slammed his claws onto the console. Trace that signal. Find them. But his crew shook their heads. The signal came from everywhere and nowhere. The jungle battle turned into a massacre. Hunters disappeared one by one, dragged into trees, their armor torn apart. In the desert, the survivors stumbled over dunes only to find themselves surrounded, their blood staining the sand. The Dravak who returned were broken, crawling back to their ships with wounds they had never known before. Wounds of fear. One survivor was dragged before Craxus. His armor was shattered, his eyes wide with terror. What happened? Craxus demanded. Where is your squad? The hunter shook, his voice breaking. They were waiting for us. They knew every step, every move. We could not see them, we could not hear them, they struck like ghosts. We thought we were hunting, but... Craxus leaned close, his fangs dripping. But what? The hunter whispered, his voice trembling, like a child's. But we were the prey. The chamber fell silent. The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time in Dravak history, the hunters had been hunted, and Earth had only just begun. The human plan, the Dravak warlord Craxus, raged inside his flagship. His claws tore through steel as reports of failure stacked higher and higher. His best hunters had been erased. His soldiers returned broken, whispering one word with trembling lips. Humans. But on Earth, deep beneath mountains and oceans, humanity was calm. They had been waiting. For centuries, humans had studied the galaxy in silence. They saw what the way Dravak did to other species. They listened to survivors' cries carried by broken signals, and they prepared. The world was no longer just cities and nations. Earth had become a fortress. Every jungle, every desert, every frozen tundra had been turned into a hunting ground, but not for the Dravak, for humanity. In an underground chamber, General Voss stood before a glowing map of the planet. Red markers showed Dravak positions. Blue lights showed human traps waiting to be triggered. They believe we are weak, Voss said to his commanders. They believe we will run, but we have studied them. Every species they hunted, we learned from. Every tactic they used, we copied and improved. Now the hunters will know fear. His words echoed like thunder. Around him stood men and women hardened by silence, their faces calm, their eyes sharp. Humanity had lost many wars before, but not this one. This one they had prepared for across generations. Above, Dravak ships hovered in the skies, hunting for signs of resistance, but instead of frightened screams, they found silence, silence thick as a blade against their throats. Then came the counterstrike. Across the forests, hidden missiles erupted, tearing through Dravak dropships. In the deserts, human fighters rose from underground hangars, their engines silent until the moment they struck. From the oceans, submarines surfaced, launching torpedoes into the belly of orbiting ships. Everywhere, humans moved with precision. No wasted fire, no wasted life. The Dravak howled in rage as ship after ship burned in the sky. Inside one Dravak command vessel, soldiers shouted in panic. They knew our codes. They knew our formation, Craxus roared. Impossible. No prey can know us so. Well, but it was true. Humans had not only defended, they had studied. They had collected data from every hunted world, learned the weaknesses of the Dravak, and turned those lessons into weapons. The hunters' strength had become their own downfall. On Earth's surface, a squad of humans ambushed a Dravak patrol in the ruins of a city. They moved through shadows, rifles in hand, eyes sharp. The Dravak roared and charged, but every step led into another trap. Explosives hidden in walls, sniper fire from rooftops, knives in the dark. When the last hunter fell, the human squad leader whispered coldly, "They thought we were prey. They were wrong." Word spread fast. Survivors from other worlds who once hid in fear now heard the impossible. The Dravak were bleeding. Their warships were falling. In hidden corners of the galaxy, the oppressed raised their heads for the first time. "If humans can fight them, maybe we can too," they whispered. But no one understood the full truth. Humans were not just fighting back. They were hunting. Craxus watched in disbelief as one of his fleets was torn apart by human warships that appeared from nowhere. Smaller than Dravak vessels, but faster, sharper, striking like wolves against lumbering beasts. The Dravak screamed in rage. The galaxy trembled in shock, and Earth remained silent. No threats, no speeches, only action. The hunters had finally become prey. The war turns. The galaxy had never seen the Dravak bleed. For thousands of years they were the hunters, the unstoppable, storm, the shadow that brought only death. But now whispers traveled across the stars. Earth was breaking them. And it was true. Human fleets began to appear where no fleet should exist. Outposts thought untouchable were destroyed overnight. Patrol ships went missing, found later as burning wrecks drifting in silence. The Dravak for the first time were being hunted. Inside his flagship, Warlord Craxus roared with rage. His claws carved through the steel floor as another officer reported failure. "My lord," the officer said, trembling, "our ships in the Rim Nebula are gone. Not captured, destroyed. Survivors say they were ambushed before they even saw the enemy." Craxus bared his fangs. "Humans are vermin. They crawl in shadows. They cannot face us in the open." But even as he spoke, alarms blared. On the screens, a human fleet appeared. Dozens of ships sliding from stealth, their engines glowing like fire. They moved faster than Dravak ships, their strikes precise. Missiles tore through Dravak cruisers. Boarding craft slammed into their hulls. The hunters screamed as humans stormed their decks. It was chaos. Humans fought with weapons designed to pierce Dravak armor, knives and rifles that never missed. They moved like ghosts, silent, ruthless, unstoppable. One Dravak commander begged for mercy before a human soldier's blade silenced him. The humans did not taunt, did not roar. They killed with calm precision. The war was no longer a hunt. It was an execution. Across the galaxy, more Dravak strongholds fell. Their traps, once feared, were turned against them. Humans hacked their systems, opening doors, draining shields, and detonating their own explosives from afar. "They know us," one Dravak survivor whispered in terror. "They know every move before we make it." And it was true. Humanity had studied the hunters for generations. Every tactic, every weakness, every arrogance. They had written them all down, and now they were using that knowledge to strike back. Soon, the galaxy that once trembled before the Dravak began to change. In hidden colonies, survivors lifted their heads. On broken worlds, voices whispered of hope. Some dared to fight again, following humanity's example. But none could match the speed and brutality of Earth's war. On the battlefield above the storm world of Koresh, Craxus faced his greatest humiliation. He had gathered his largest fleet, hundreds of ships, more than enough to crush any prey. He believed numbers would finally end the human defiance, but the humans came anyway. They emerged from the storm itself, their ships shielded by lightning, striking without warning. Dravak vessels exploded one after another, their screams lost in the thunder. On the bridge of his ship, Kraxus stared in shock. For the first time in his life, fear gripped him. A message came through the comms, not Dravak, human. The voice was calm, cold, final. If you lose here, you lose everything, Kraxus snarled, but his heart sank. This was no prey speaking. This was a predator. The battle raged for hours, but the end was already decided. Human ships cut through the Dravak fleet like knives through flesh. Their tactics were too sharp, their resolve too strong. When the fires finally died, half of Kraxus's fleet was gone. The rest fled into the dark, hunted by shadows they could not escape. The galaxy watched in silence. For the first time in memory, the hunters were losing, and humanity was only just beginning. The last hunt, the Dravak Empire, was crumbling. Once their fleet spread across the stars like fire. Now they limped from battle to battle, bleeding ships, bleeding soldiers, bleeding pride. The hunters had become the hunted. Warlord Kraxus refused to accept defeat. He retreated to the last stronghold of the Dravak, a fortress world carved from black stone, surrounded by rings of warships, a base that had never fallen. From his throne of iron, Kraxus growled at his generals. Let the humans come. Here, in our home, we will crush them. We will remind the galaxy who the hunters are. The generals roared in agreement, though fear hid in their eyes. Around the stronghold, defenses burned bright. Cannons aimed at the void. Traps lay waiting in the dark. The Dravak had turned their world into a snare, believing it would save them. But the humans came anyway. Silent as shadows, their fleet slipped through the void. Their ships did not roar, their banners did not wave. They moved like predators, unseen until it was too late. The first Dravak ships detected nothing. Then, without warning, their hulls split apart in fire. Human torpedoes tore through the blockade. Small, fast vessels weaved between Dravak cruisers, leaving trails of wreckage. Behind, the Dravak screamed, firing wildly into the dark. But for every shot they fired, 3 more of their ships burned. On the fortress world below, panic spread. Soldiers shouted in fear as alarms echoed through the towers. They are here! They are inside the defenses! In the shadows of the strongholds, streets human strike teams moved like ghosts. They planted charges, hacked systems, and vanished before the Dravak could even see them. Every explosion sent shockwaves across the city, shaking the hunters to their knees. Whispers spread among the Dravak ranks. Soldiers clutched their weapons tighter. Some trembled. Some prayed. One whispered what all feared to admit. They are everywhere. They hear us when we speak. Do not say their name. The humans will find you. Even Kraxus felt it. The silence of Earth echoed in his ears. No taunts, no speeches, just the cold, relentless strike of a predator that did not stop until the prey was gone. The last hunt had begun, and it was not the Dravaks. Kraxus bared his fangs and marched to the balcony of his fortress, staring at the burning sky. His empire was collapsing before his eyes, but he would not fall quietly. Come then, humans, he roared into the night. Face me if you are not cowards. Hunt me if you dare. The flames above answered. Human ships descended, their shadows, blotting out the stars. The Dravak fired every weapon they had. Cannons roared, missiles screamed, shields flared. But nothing stopped the human fleet. They cut through the defenses as if they had been built of paper. Kraxus gripped his war axe, his claws trembling. For the first time, he wondered if this was how prey had felt when facing him. Alone. Trapped. Hunted. The ground shook. Explosions ripped through the fortress walls. Human soldiers poured inside, their rifles sharp, their eyes cold. The Dravak fought with desperation, but fear crippled them. Every hall, every street, every shadow was an ambush. Kraxus roared and swung his axe, cleaving through steel and stone. But his soldiers fell all around him, broken by a relentless enemy that never slowed, never hesitated. The fortress burned. The empire screamed, and above it all, Earth remained silent. The truth revealed. The fortress of the Dravak burned. Towers of black stone crumbled into ash, warships rained from the skies like falling stars, and the screams of hunters filled the night. For the first time in their long history, the galaxy's most feared predators were prey. Warlord Craxus staggered through the smoke-filled halls of his stronghold. His armor was cracked, his war axe heavy in his hands. Around him his soldiers lay broken. Some had fled, some had fallen, none had won. The roar of battle faded, only silence remained. Craxus lifted his head and saw them, humans. They walked through the ruins like shadows, their rifles steady, their movements sharp. Their armor was scratched but strong, their eyes cold but calm. They did not cheer, they did not roar, they did not boast. They simply advanced, step by step, like hunters closing in on their final kill. Craxus bared his fangs and raised his axe. I am Craxus. I am warlord of the Dravak. You think you can erase us? The humans stopped. One of them stepped forward. His helmet was scarred, his voice deep and steady. We are not here to erase you, he said. We are here to end the hunt. Craxus roared and charged. His axe came down like thunder. But the human sidestepped, faster than the massive warlord could react. A blade flashed, sharp and precise. The axe fell from Craxus's claws. His knees hit the ground. Blood dripped from his chest, dark and heavy. He gasped, staring up at the silent humans surrounding him. For the first time, his voice trembled. Why? Why fight us? We hunted because we were strong. That is the way of the galaxy. Strong hunts weak, that is the law. The human leader crouched beside him. His eyes, cold and burning, met Craxus's. Then let me tell you the new law, he whispered. Hunt us, and we will hunt you back. Craxus's breath faltered. His eyes widened in horror. Then the life left him. The last roar of the Dravak. Warlord died in silence. Above the fortress, human ships hovered like shadows against the stars. Across the galaxy, signals spread from Earth's command. The message was simple, carried to every corner of space. The hunters are finished. Humanity has risen. We are not prey, we never were. We are the predators now. In refugee camps, survivors wept with joy. On broken worlds, voices rose in hope. Races once hunted by the Dravak now whispered the same words. Humanity fought back. Humanity hunted them. Humanity won. The galaxy trembled, not in fear of the Dravak anymore, but in awe of Earth. The age of prey was over, and the age of humanity had begun.